how many people in the audience have had somebody tell them their idea is ridiculous? That's it? Everybody else thinking, really? Come on. One idea, more than one. So there's a lot of people here, obviously, including me, that people said, no, that'll never work. It's ridiculous. In the 1990s, I was trying to pitch Kodak to do a digital imaging internet play. You guys should be on the internet to Kodak. We were in this little room, no windows, in the bottom of some department, and they said, why do we need an internet imaging strategy? Well, the rest, obviously, with Kodak, that's history. They never came on the bandwagon. Another time, in 2003, I wrote an article that said camera phones would replace point-and-shoot cameras. Everybody thought I was absolutely mad. So I don't always have the answers, but a couple of them, I'm sure even your ideas, if they're saying they're ridiculous and you believe in them, you got to go attack them. And on that note, our next speaker is Stephan Ouaknine, and I hope I pronounced that right. He's a venture capitalist and a CEO of Energy's Renewables. He comes from the telecom sector, where over a 15-year career spanning 3 high-tech ventures, delivered over $1 billion in total shareholder value, so that's impressive. And his personal mission statement is reinvent the world of energy. And now you understand from why I mentioned my stories earlier. His topic is called Ridicule, 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 Genius. I'd like to ask Stephan to come on up. There he is.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. This is working. First of all, I'm not a venture capitalist. I hate venture capitalists.
Wow.
Yeah. No, seriously.
I didn't read that right.
No, I'm the anti-VC.
Sorry, guys.
So, how's everybody feel? Who heard McClure earlier today? Yeah. So you're all in your fuck mode, right? Okay. So why did I call it ridicule, genius? Because at a certain point, when you're trying to do something that's really worth doing, that's really innovative, you're going to get ridiculed. You better have a very thick skin for the ridicule, because the bigger the vision, the more you're going to be told you can't do it. Okay? So, I built a couple of companies in my career, each one successfully to exit, and each one, as I went along, was told it would fail for a variety of reasons. And I persevered, and I'm sure that you've heard these stories about the importance of perseverance and having a very thick skin. And eventually, each one of those experiences was called genius, after it was called crazy. So all of those were in the telecom industry, and I decided to change industries and go into the world of energy. Now, clean tech investing is a particularly difficult space. It's very capital intensive. It means it requires a lot more capital than a lot of web startups require at the beginning. And as an asset class, the investors who invest in this space have not produced very well. So in fact, the funders of these ventures or of these funds, the funders of the funds, have been retreating, moving away from this space, even though it has so much potential. So because I've made a career of running towards a burning building, I decided, okay, perfect. Everybody's scared of it. Sounds like it's just right for me. And we proceeded to build a business case that was extremely different, and I want to tell you a little bit about that today. But one thing about VCs that get under my skin, I always... Are there any other VCs in the audience, just to know who I'm insulting? Okay. Good. No VCs. They're all busy not investing in companies. So the thing that always drove me nuts about them was this sort of unearned arrogance. Like they're very analytical people who are very good at pointing out your risk factors and your flaws, but haven't the foggiest idea very often what to actually do in the field to make it work. And the ones that say they're entrepreneurial, I always found that was smoke and mirrors. What they mean by entrepreneurial is they had a VC friend, parachuted them into a company after it had $50 million invested into it. That's maybe more entrepreneurial than working at Bombardier, but it's not like hardcore entrepreneurship. That's like, we'll call it softcore entrepreneurship. So the part that always drove me nuts was the way that they would ask the wrong questions and look for the wrong boxes to tick which is why a lot of times they haven't produced yield, they were making the wrong investments. But now that I've come to the dark side, I've come to the world of raising a fund and actually seeing what's behind the curtain, I understand why they're such assholes. I really do. Because they're being treated like absolute shit by the fund of funds, the institutionals, the ones that they have to grovel and beg for money from. So when you go out and talk to VCs, just be aware that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that has hardened them into the very nice people that you see in front of you. Now that I'm done shitting on VCs, let's try to show a little bit of vision here. So I looked at energy, and I said, okay, we have a major problem. Okay, we have a planet that is in trouble. We have major population growth, while we have less and less of the natural resources, the non-renewable resources that we've been using to power our planet since its inception and through the Industrial Revolution and beyond. All of the growth that's going on in China, in India, is requiring more and more natural resources, and before you know it, in a blink of an eye, all that oil is going to be gone, and even the natural gas is going to be gone, and we're going to be left with a big question mark as to how we continue to survive as a species. I know that sounds really big, but it's actually true. The other thing is we have climate change. So as the planet gets a little bit warmer, we're having oceans, rise in a little bit of temperature, the famous 2 degrees that requires, or that is creating a polar ice cap that's now melting, that's changing weather patterns and ocean currents. So if you haven't noticed, we have wackier weather, and it's going to only get worse and worse and worse. So it's a big dilemma. How do we fix this problem? Well, we look at, the industry of energy production, and we see a very troubling trend. Okay? So when you guys go to an airport and you see all of the airport advertising out there, I remember like 15 years ago, it was always like telecom. You remember 10 years ago, it was always a guy holding a cell phone, and then it was like a guy doing data on a phone. Did you notice that those advertisements have been somewhat replaced by wind turbines and solar panels and all these other wonderful advertisements from BP and others and GE that would convince you that 90% of what they do is sustainable and lovely and wonderful for the planet? In reality, it's this. This is the cold, hard reality. 3% of our energy comes from clean energy sources, and 97% is the rest. Okay? So that's very concerning to me when I look at what's going on with our planet. How do we fix that? Well, first of all, you need to have the financial strength to be able to make a dent. If you don't have a big pile of money, then all the wonderful ideas in the world aren't going to make a difference. So we set out to raise a fund, and we started getting ridiculed. We kept saying, look at this. This is what's happening in the world, and this is what it's leading us to. And everybody said, you're right. Absolutely. Fantastic. But as an asset class, it hasn't performed very well. Or, well, energy requires, a reevaluation of the regulatory environment. So when we see that change, then, we'll be more ready to make investments. Or you have fantastic ideas with your fund, but we'd like to see you in your second and third fund. We'd like to see how you perform in the first fund. Or we'd like to see a team that hadn't worked together before work together on this fund. Or what do you mean $1 billion fund? Here in Canada, we're used to $100 million funds. Well, $100 million isn't going to cut it in this industry. But $1 billion is a little off-putting. It seems too big. You should know your place. You should be a smaller fund. So many ways of being shot down that I'm sure many of you can relate to in your own respective companies. And it's all about that perseverance when you know you have a good, when you know that you have a very good model. So, our model was essentially to create a clean tech revolution by changing 2 things. First of all, technology. Okay? In the world of energy, the innovation required in order to make the clean sources of energy no longer reliant on subsidies is important. We have to make wind turbines cheaper, and solar prices must keep coming down from innovation. We have to do the same thing in the storage industry. So imagine how impactful it would be if you could store a lot of these non-renewable or renewable sources of energy and then use them or package them to be sent somewhere else for use later. So, the way that we do with oil, we put it in a barrel and we ship it off and they use it somewhere else. Imagine if you could absorb all of the North African sun and then take all these countries in Europe that are moving off of nuclear and looking for a new major energy source for this population-dense place. Imagine if you could absorb, we found a company that's taking bauxite, which is a mineral that's super cheap and widely available, and it's conductive at a certain temperature. So imagine if you could absorb all that sun and then float it on a barge to Southern Europe, drain it of its energy, connect it into the grid, and literally run a ferry service. You could float it back to North Africa. It would also take care of a security concern, because it's not just the cost of cabling solar power from North Africa to Europe, it's also the security concern. What if Al-Qaeda came and bombed it all of a sudden? You would debilitate an entire infrastructure. It's easier to secure a flotilla. These are out-of-the-box solutions that are involving innovation in a wide scale. Innovation that requires not $5 million of startup capital, but $50 million investments, and then another $150 million, let's say, of debt financing for a project. So we said we need a tech push at the specific time that the ones who normally finance innovation, the VCs, are kind of retreating from clean tech. So we looked at this and said, okay, we better get on this innovation real fast. The second one is a market pull. And this one's interesting. Nobody was really looking at this. But you guys who understand telecom, I always give this example, you understand the dynamic of when there was only one phone company to choose from 15 years ago, let's call them Bell, and then all of a sudden, with certain deregulation and innovations that happened in that industry, it became possible to become a multi-country branded communications company. Let's call them Vodafone. Anybody know how many countries Vodafone's in? 198 countries today. Okay? So why don't we have that in energy? So if you want to buy your electricity here in Quebec today, who do you buy it from? Hydro-Quebec, or maybe Gaz Metro. But that's it. It's kind of fragmented, regionalized, and highly monopolistic and super inefficient. So what Energis was saying is, well, it doesn't have to be that way. More and more now, there's international pressure on deregulation to allow you to become, that permits you to become a real alternative energy provider that can sell retailed electricity from whatever source you get it from, dirty, clean, renewable, non-renewable, and you could sell it direct. That's a big idea, because if you think about it, when you enter an industry where you're appealing for consumer contracts, you want to appeal to the consumer to like your brand and to like you, in an industry where your competition has never done it. When's the last time Hydro-Quebec jumped up and down to make you love them? Right? Think about it for a second. They hadn't had to, because it's government run, it's monopolistic, they don't need to fight for your business. Well, that's actually a great business to go into competition with if your competition has never really cared because they were the incumbent. So creating a market pull by becoming a multi-country projects, utility company was, we thought, a very bright idea. And then delivering the most important thing that the innovation companies needed from our projects company, which is sales. Because when you look at an industry that is capital intensive, any tech industry, what you need to get out of the fundraising mode as quickly as possible is revenue and profitability, right? We all agree that we don't like dilution as entrepreneurs. We don't like doing round after round after round, what I call the alphabet soup of rounds, the A round, the B, as if you're wearing it like a badge that you're at the X round, because you convinced $223 million of investment dollars to come into your company. Forget about the fact that you own 1.5% now, and that you got this really, really annoying board pulling you in every direction. It's not good. What we want is for you to stop fundraising and to be profitable. So we bring revenues to the tech company from the projects that we control. Wouldn't that be a great idea in every industry that investors invest in? That's acting as a strategic investor. So we thought that was a very, very bright idea. And yet, we were ridiculed and ridiculed and ridiculed some more. I think we're going to, in the end, be called genius. I hope that you guys will follow us and track us and be involved and seek to get in contact with us if you know people in the clean tech space. At the end of the day, we have to reinvent the way we power the world. We have no choice. We're running out of the other stuff, and we have a major climate change issue. I think that it is the issue for the next couple of decades, and the early joiners with new business models are the ones who are going to make not just a ton of money, but a ton of good in the world. I think insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. I look at the financing models right now in clean tech that are letting companies' burn rates get out of control and consistently producing failure after failure, and I see, if you take that domino effect or that value chain, I see the investors not making money, so their investors pulling back. It's just not working, okay? And yet, the BDC put out a fantastic report about the venture space in Canada, calling it un-Darwinian. Why is it un-Darwinian? Because if you can believe this, the bottom quartile gets the most money. The biggest chunk of money from fund of funds and institutional investors in Canada that's gone into the VC crowd across this country have gone into the ones that have produced the worst results. Go figure. We have to break out of this. We have to reward out-of-the-box thinking, and we have to bring entrepreneurship back into the world of investing so that it can work with the entrepreneurs and the tech companies to actually get out there and produce in the field. That's what we're not doing. We're real good at analyzing stuff in the boardroom. We're not super good about executing in the field. We got to get better at commercialization. We got to get hyper-aggressive about new business models. So that's my question for you. What are you doing to get ridiculed tomorrow? I wanted to leave the last 3 minutes for any maybe questions that you might have, because I'm going to have to run after this, and I wanted to, be challenged or asked any question that anybody might have. Anybody? The lady in the back. Yes, I heard you. Okay. I don't think that it's only offshore. We have seen hydrogen injection technologies here in North America, and I really believe that that's one of the untapped potential areas. There are others, by the way, but again, I want to reward innovative thinking. I'll give you an example. One of the partners that recently joined Energous is a guy called Jigar Shah. Jigar is a rock star in the world of clean tech and alternative energies. Started a company called Sun Edison that built essentially the largest solar footprint in the world. Sold it, for a couple $100 million from the first founder, ran it as CEO all the way through the exit. Jigar knows all about what it takes to make a success. And what he talks a lot about is it's not just about like the solar technology in that case. It's also about the alternative financing methods, the mechanisms. We just have to be out of the box on technology, but also on how we fund this space. And I really think it's going to be a hyper-lucrative space. Any other questions in the last minute? Julian.
What do you think about competing against religion and government?
Competing against religion and government, which in the United States is the same thing. Ooh, turn on Fox News. What climate change? No, I would say that the best chance we have to overturn this particular problem of energy is a public-private partnership. We have to change the way we view or vilify government. We have to rope them in as partners, make them have a vested interest, and work with them. So at Energous, for example, we brought in government as major investor in order to then make them have a stake in our success. Religion, well, that's a different question that we can talk about over a beer. Thank you.